Hello everyone, welcome back to the Elements of Harmony study. Today we're going to be going through kindness. If you could turn with me in your Bibles, or if you have a Bible app or tab, be able to bring it up on the side. Follow along, I'd love to have you with me. In the book of Galatians, chapter 5, verses 22 through 23, it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, longsuffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such there is no law." And what exactly that has to do with kindness is that I want to bring to attention in specifically the element's main nature was seen in Fluttershy's personality, but allow me to make the argument and say that when Fluttershy's character needed development in any of the episodes, you name it, Keep Calm and Flutter On, Stairmaster, any of the episodes that focused on her developing, it more focused on her courage or self-confidence and worth, but never necessarily to improve how she was kind, with the rare exception of maybe 2 episodes. But even then, it was more put into practice her kind nature and not necessarily improve on it or see it in action. Now, this is where I want to bring up the first point, is that kindness is a fruit of the Spirit, in that it's not something seen, but it's something that you earn. It's a title that is gained through stuff that you do, and it comes from the deepest part of who you are. Now, we'll be getting into that in a second, but to start off, I want to address first, what does this fruit look like? Is it red? Is it yellow? Is it an apple or an orange? Well, in the book of Luke, chapter 10, verses 30 through 37, Jesus told a story. I'm sure you've all heard it before, a Samaritan. For those of you who don't know ancient Jewish culture, the Samaritans were actually an interbred Jewish and Assyrian bloodline that resulted when 700 to 600 years before Christ, the northern 10 tribes were taken away into captivity from Israel because they were falling into idolatry. So they were handed over to Idolatry Central and the ones that were worshiping all of these idols. And what the Assyrians would do when taking over a nation is they'd intermingle the culture, so you would lose your sense of identity. A Samaritan was someone who was of Jewish descent, but had also intermarried into foreign cultures. And basically they were very morally compromised. They were looked down upon as far as, children of Jews that have deviated from the true bloodline. And for those of you who know, the Jewish bloodline was told to remain pure because it was only through a pure direct descendant of King David, as well as through Abraham and Isaac and so on, that the Messiah would come through Israel. That's why they had to be so strict. It wasn't an issue of racism. It wasn't xenophobia. It was just in the sense that God commanded them, I'm going to be bringing a Messiah through your bloodline, so you generally want to keep the bloodline Jewish. So that was their main focus. And the Samaritan was just a socially looked down upon, basically a ghetto guy. And I'll be happy to read along with me. Jesus answered and said, referring to the guy who was asking a question concerning how can I love my neighbor as myself. He wanted to make himself justified, prove himself as a very righteous person, worthy of eternal life. And he wanted to come to Jesus, being a spiritual figure to anyone, regardless of whether you agreed with him or not. And he said, simply asking, if I'm supposed to love my neighbor as myself, who is my neighbor? And Jesus answered and said, verse 30, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked, and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, poured on oil and wine, and set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will come again. I will repay you." So which of these 3 do you think was the neighbor to him who fell among thieves? And he said, "He who showed mercy on him." Then Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." Now, note, he was looking to express what God had put in his heart to want to live a righteous life. And in recognizing what it means to be a kind person, you don't look down the street and easily identify a joyful personality or a generous personality as much as you do a kind person. Because a lot of people can look nice on the outside but have like a lot of junk going on the end. And then likewise, there's people who are really messed up on the outside, but on the inside they'd be the sweetest people you'd ever meet. Well, if you want to be able to express kindness, it's got to come from the deepest part of you. It has to be from your roots, from your foundation. Basically, the translation is just what it's attuned to be. And a lot of people can get these things mixed up in saying, just like generosity is an outward expression of seeking another's benefit even at your own expense, you see that in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Likewise, with laughter, a spirit of joy, something that you've been given that you just can't help but share in the lives of those around you. Kindness is like both, and yet received, manifested, I would even say, in a different way. Kindness, I would define in biblical terms, as the natural actions of a loving heart. It is a fruit of the Spirit. And we see this given a unique quality, as opposed to laughter and generosity in Keep Calm and Flutter On. You would remember when Fluttershy made sacrifices, including her element, risking, of course, discord running loose again. She wasn't a fool. She knew the value of what she was offering discord, and that if he would turn that down, then there was just no hope for him. But because she hoped all things, and she suffered long with him and still showed kindness, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4, discord saw, tasted, felt, and recognized that kindness and friendship that Fluttershy offered for what it was. And once he had it and lost it, that is what Fluttershy was banking on, is that the expression of agape love, even in the smallest of ways, it wasn't something that even a villain like Discord could live without, and it turned an enemy into a friend. And it's like Abraham Lincoln once said, "If I take my enemy and make him my friend, have I not defeated my enemy?" So in one way, I guess, just like Nightmare Moon, the enemy was made into an ally. But likewise, I think this fruit is unique in the sense that what it affects. Let's talk about some of the specific aspects of what we've talked about so far. Joy, or rather laughter, Pinkie Pie's personality. Recognize that it's in your spirit, what makes you special. Your likes and interests, quirks, it's all centered around this one aspect. When you meet a joyful person, you can oftentimes see the other fruits of the Spirit that come out of it, because love and joy comes immediately after it. And you can also look back on Galatians 5:22 and say, don't those all have a certain aspect of themselves in the first? If you love somebody, are you going to be happy? If you could be described in one word, and that would be a loving person, don't you think you'd have joy, peace? If you love somebody, you want to be patient with them, you want to be kind to them, you want to be gentle. All of these things are an expression outwardly, a extension of the definition, if you will, of the first word. The fruit of the Spirit is love. What does this look like? Now note, what does it look like? We can see laughter in people even if they don't do anything. You can recognize joy in their lives just because love is so involved in their heart that it's overflowing to the lives of those around them. But how about generosity? Or like we talked about, grace? that can be involved in your mind. You could be given grace, you can be given a gift generously and still choose to receive it or express it. Just like a person who feels like they could give to a homeless person on the street, they could talk themselves out of it in the sense that saying, well, I don't want to give them money because they could end up buying illicit products with it. Likewise, someone who would be just generous to just say, you know what, I want to help them out in any way I can, so I'll take the money and make sure I'm with them when I spend it. Or then, in other ways, you could say, I'm going to use the money to buy them stuff that I know they need, like water, clothing, such. But kindness, or in this case, love, it comes from the soul as opposed to the personality and mind. And I do make a distinction because who you are as a person is distinct from who you become and who you are becoming. I'll make this argument saying that when someone is joyful, that is, in a sense, something that they've learned over time, something that they've received all from outward sources. Now note, kindness is a gift from God. Remember we talked about that in the element of magic. All of these things, everything good comes from the Father of lights, James chapter 1. But they can all be received and expressed in different ways, just like a bike is a gift, just as much as a car, but they can be used for different purposes for longer periods of time, right? They may have the same function, but some are meant for shorter travel and some take more to support, but can also give more back. Now, laughter, generosity, kindness, joy, grace, love. When all of these things make up who you are, they can be considered the same thing, and yet they are distinct in what they affect. Grace is something you can think about, something you can receive, something that you can process. It's tangible. And we see its action as something that is touching or it's something that is humbling. Likewise, laughter, it's something that we can outwardly express from something that we can translate into our minds and our hearts. And basically the mind, the heart, and the spirit, the personality, the mind, the soul. When these things move and grow in our lives, I guarantee you I was not the same person that I was 7 years ago. In fact, modern psychologists are saying that that's like the transition of maturity. First 3 stages, ages 1 to 7, you generally worried about, candy, interest, the next thrill, toys, all of the stuff that interests you in this moment, being cared to, trusting people. But then, as you start to mature into grade school level, into adolescence, you start to worry more about your social standing, you start to have anxieties, you start to go through puberty, and you get all of these changes to your body, and you start, progressing in maturity in that sense. And then as you age from 14 to 21, then you start to work on independence, and you start to develop into, hopefully a person of character, or likewise through other influences that you've allowed into your life or that have been put into your life, you can end up making these things as a foundation for yourself, and that affects your soul, because your soul is the foundation of who you are and how you receive and express things. If you have at your core a bitter soul, then the way you receive things, even acts of kindness, could be through a smile, but even then, someone smiles at you, it can be taken as sarcastic. Someone gives you a gift and you can just say, I'm not that poor. But then likewise, if you have a heart that's giving, then when someone gives you a gift, you think like, oh, no, I should be giving this to you. If you have a gentle heart, a quiet heart, just like Fluttershy, you can see these things as just what makes Fluttershy Fluttershy. And like I said, what's going to be standing before God someday isn't your body or your history. It's all of that defined in what's made you, you at your core and foundation. Just like for Christians, when we receive Jesus Christ, we're saying we're putting to death the old life and being risen up new in one that's aware of spiritual things. Now, when these aspects of kindness are introduced to our heart and soul, we can see the opposite just as much as we can see the original. Now, you remember the discord episode. We can recognize this for any of the elements in seeing their exact equal and opposite. When Rarity was discorded, you could recognize all of her twisted personality was expressed in how she was going to receive and process things. It was, that rock is so beautiful, it must be mine. And by this she was hoarding and stealing everything for her own gain. That was her mind being corrupted. Likewise, Pinkie Pie's personality was altered in that instead of being joyful, she became bitter. She became angry. She started to push people away, and people felt that distance, that aura of tension, that wall, without even knowing what exactly was the problem. It was just her character. But then, when Fluttershy got discorded, you would notice it was a lot of a more bigger problem than just any of the other character flaws that came. It was that Fluttershy was made, literally, at her center, a mean person. Now, Pinkie Pie's attitude, Rarity's taking in of things around her, it didn't match up to Fluttershy's element, because when that got corrupted, it was all the way to the core. In the book of Matthew, chapter 23, verses 25 through 28, Jesus actually went on a rip with the scribes and Pharisees, the religious people, who were basically giving him a hard time, saying, you can't do things this way. You can see me as a perfect person. I've kept all of the law. I even got merit badges for it. I dress for the part. I look holy. And Jesus was saying, just flat out, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside are full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisees, first cleanse the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead man's bones and all uncleanness. Even you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Jesus was bringing up the point that basically says, in our culture we want to make everything beautiful. We put little doilies and draperies and light nice little candles, but even though we decorate it up, if it's your toilet, you're not going to decorate this thing and make it so attractive to the point where you're just going to say, why don't we take this thing and, bring it into the living room? It's just being lost in the bathroom. Quoted that for Brad Stein. It's awesome. Anyway, you can spray air freshener on a piece of dog poop. It's not going to change the fact that you don't want to be around it. If you're going to drink a cup, where are you going to get all of this important stuff from? It's going to be on the inside. And Jesus was saying that's more important than cleaning the outside and making it shiny. Because I guarantee you, when dinner comes along, I may look at the cupboard and say, that mug looks very clean. And I look inside, I put it back because that is officially crossed into a barrier I don't want to enter into. Onions are great, but when it's mixed with Pepsi, it becomes less of a good thing. Now, on to the next point. There are two aspects of kindness. There are two ways you can express kindness. You can even get it wrong when you're doing it. There's worldly and spiritual. Paul always brought this up as the battle between the spirit and the flesh, constantly battling between each other. Worldly kindness, I like to call it grudging kindness, because it's always done through obligation, or it's trying to guilt trip someone into doing something nice for you by you first doing it. Like, no one enjoys being invited over for dinner and you're, enjoying the meal and you ask for seconds and the person says, well, that could have fed us all week, but looks like that's not happening. Not the best expression of hospitality. And opposed to that, there's spiritual stuff from the heart, pure, loving kindness. Doing nice things for people without a thought in your mind of getting anything in return. You just want to do something nice for them because that's who you are, and you want to see them gain something. Just like generosity, but from the source. We see examples of this in Scripture, 3 different sources. Romans 12:15 says, rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. We see this in compassion and in empathy. When someone expresses kindness in personal interaction with you, it really comes down to just meeting you where you're at. When Jesus was visiting two girls who had just lost their brother, these were people who were close to Jesus. He met them just like when they were celebrating a birthday party or having a big wine feast for him in his honor. He was there to celebrate with them, but just like when they ended up losing a family member before Jesus rose Lazarus from the dead, he cried with Mary. And that was an expression of kindness in that he was willing to take himself and suffer just as much as he was willing to celebrate with those that he cared about. Him at his core was willing to empathize with those around him, even to the point of becoming one and sharing in their pains just as much as their pleasures. Another example that kind of adds on to this is the book of Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 18. Jesus has a level of understanding and compassion in that what the verse says, for in that he himself has suffered, being tempted, he is able to aid those who are tempted. In a later verse, it mentions that we do not have a great high priest who's not able to sympathize with our weaknesses, being tempted in every way we are, yet without sin. Now, it's encouraging in of itself to know that when you have a personal relationship with Jesus and then start struggling, you know that you can talk to him about it because he did it before you. Just like Jesus knows what it's like to suffer pain and being scourged and crucified, he knows what it's like to suffocate. He also knows what it's like to go through puberty. He knows what it's like to go through relationship issues. He knows what it's like to be in social anxieties. He knows what it's like to be bullied and made fun of for doing the right thing. Okay? Jesus is willing to lower himself to the point of being able to go through even the worst pains possible for the sake of knowing you better. The kindness at its heart, at its core. And no better example. I'd love to read this to you. It's the last verse in the book of Jonah. I'm sure for those of you who watch VeggieTales would know that all of the Ninevites, the people slapping each other with fishes, well, in the real version it was a little bit more intense than that. But because Jonah ended up in the belly of the fish for 3 days and finally taught like the worst sympathy-based call to altar in history, God's Spirit moved, and everyone in the city of Nineveh, because Jonah said, the city's going to be destroyed in 40 days unless you guys get your act together, and then just left. Give that message today, and people probably start throwing stuff at you, but instead they started throwing uncomfortable burlap sacks, not only on their own backs, but on their animals. And Jonah was upset at this because he didn't like the Assyrians. They were evil and cruel people, and he wanted God to judge them, and even got upset to the point of saying, God, you're so loving and kind. Your mercy is just so unparalleled. Why did you have to save these people? I may as well have died. And God just laughed and says, should I not pity Nineveh, that great city in which more than 120,000 persons who cannot discern between their right hand and their left, and much livestock? Guess what, folks? God cares about the animals too. He was willing to spare the lives of all those people in their city. Why? Because they didn't know any better. He can't excuse evil, but he is willing to offer forgiveness for those who are willing to receive it. That's why Jesus' suffering and the price that was put on his back was so high, because he took it that seriously. And he has pity on each and every one of us in that forgiveness and mercy are expressed in this form of kindness, even looking down to the very heart of the issue, and that we did these things because we didn't know any better. Now, there is a harsher standard held to those who did something and they knew it was wrong. I'm sure any of you guys who've had strict parents would know that. But God even pitied the animals who were just there. They didn't really have much say in it. Most of them were going to be tomorrow's meal anyway. But God's saying, the sheep are adorable. I don't want to blow them up. I want to give you guys a chance to turn around. Even with the ark. We're going to be talking about this in a future study, but God spared the animals when mankind had gone to its worst point. He cares, and he's willing to offer mercy to those who will receive it. But here is the last point that I really want to finish on, is that it's never easy. When I'm talking about a fruit, it is something, you never hear a tree grunt. It's not going to force more fruit out. It's going to come in its own time. You live with your heart and core at the center of your being, centered around kindness and just wanting to care about people. It's going to be a natural result of it in just the way that you live. But expressing real agape, real love, real compassion, real kindness. There's no better put in Romans 5:8. It's the personal life and testimony of Jesus Christ basically summed up into one sentence. And when we can recognize this, everything else basically falls into place. And then it says this, "But God demonstrates his own love towards us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Now, the verses before this, it was mentioning that for good people, for decent people, some might consider it. But Jesus took your penalty on himself. He died in your place, not when you were at your best, but when you hated him, when you were willing to spit in his face, when you wanted nothing to do with him. Jesus said, "I would die for that person," right after point blank saying no to him. Now, pure love, and I'm not talking about like true love, romance, I'm talking about pure, unrestrained agape love, is so hard because it's never deserved when fully expressed. And it's not always wanted either. And I want to bring up this point in that I myself, being a Christian, have tried to share my faith with a lot of people, and very few have taken to it kindly. And I think that's no accident, because yes, I am a fallen human being, and when I try to express and share the good thing that I've been given out of seeking the gain of another person, even at the risk of them hating me, even at the risk of losing the friendship, I want the life that I've been given to be shared with other people, just like with laughter, just like with generosity, but just at my core, I know that this gift wasn't only intended for me. God loved the world, and if I care about someone enough, it's only going to be natural that I'm going to want them to share in this reward with me, that Jesus freely gave his life for me, and that I want to share it with you. So for those of you who aren't Christians, just recognize we're not putting a trip on you. We're not trying to tell you you're wrong. It's that we have the spirit and life of Jesus Christ, the same one who died for you, in our hearts, all but screaming for you to do the exact same thing so that he can grab you in his wings, just like a mother hen in his chicks, to receive back a relationship that was lost. Something that you couldn't even help, but you just can't hear well because your mind, your heart, your soul are set on the physical instead of the spiritual. And that's also a part of the Christian walk, in learning to recognize these things. Focusing not only on just, I wanted to visit my parents and I got home safe. Then you say, God was in that because they were meant to have that one special night together, and that you could experience joy and pray together, and it would mean that much more to you. God wanted you to enjoy that. We can see these things not because we're religious and crazy, but we're just seeing things from a new perspective because our heart's been changed. And note, still in the process of changing, because I've seen some Christians share the gospel in ways that isn't very good news, but at least they're making the effort to try and be kind. We're never going to be perfect, but you can give us a break in that. You remember the Breezy's episode. Just like I'm saying, it's never easy and it's often putting a lot at risk. Fluttershy proved true agape kindness in her heart, even if it meant breaking her heart. Because the Breezys were comfortable where they were at. They were happy to be in Fluttershy's cottage. They were in a place where all of their needs were being taken care of, even to the point of taking advantage of Fluttershy's patience. Now note, Fluttershy saw that these Breezys weren't built for this world, that where they were staying at, they were all at risk of losing their lives. And because of that risk of seeing them ending up eventually alone, leaving behind all of their families and not seeing their kids to be born, hurt by all of the hazardous animals, or even ending up getting killed, because they were just so small creatures designed for a specific environment, created for a different purpose than the ponies were meant to endure. She was willing to take the pain of scorning those Breezys because it was seeking their greatest benefit long term, even if the Breezes weren't thinking in those terms. She'd rather face their anger in telling them you're wrong than just letting them go to think that they were fine when they weren't. And that's the exact same thing that I hope the Holy Spirit is speaking to your guys' hearts right now. If you feel that conviction and you just know that maybe the way I've been living my life, it's always felt good right now, but it never satisfies. It's like salt water. The more I take, the more I get thirsty. And you want to experience kindness at your root, be able to love people in a way that you never could before. That even in the ways that you were a kind person, a little bit of you was worldly in it, in that you wanted to get something else out of it. You don't just want to love people because of love. You want to be able to receive that infinite supply of joy, and you want to know exactly what motivated Jesus. And when he said, you were at your worst and I died for you, you want to know the name and the heart of someone who loves you that much, who is that kind to you, to be willing to take everything from you, even to this day, of all the times that you've ignored him, of all the chances you've had to receive him, and you've said no to a relationship, and he has continued to spare your life and bring in more and more people to all but beg with you like I am now, to receive this gift of salvation from him. Then all you need to do is ask, recognize that what you're doing is wrong, apologize,